Hey, it's Jonathan again, and today I'm going to talk about the weight of expectations. So if this is the first time you're watching me, so I'm Jonathan Edwards and I run athletespecific.com, where I run a coaching program for families and athletes who have big athletic dreams. So, I talk about topics that you might not have really thought about or talked about. A lot of times athletes just focus on, the technical aspects of their sport. And I know that to be successful, you have to work on a whole variety of things to make that happen. So I focus on families who are pursuing that athletic dream. And through my Athlete Breakthrough Blueprint and my Mental Performance School, that's where I work with athletes globally, which is kind of cool, and about interesting topics. And this week, what we're going to talk about is the NFL draft. So you may not be a football fan, but that really doesn't matter, because one of the first lessons I'll tell you as an athlete is that you really need to be a fan of athletes, like in other sports. They don't have to be just your sport. And as a matter of fact, if you only look at athletes within your sport, your chance of being successful are diminished, like they're smaller than if you look at athletes outside your sport, because you can learn from what they have to go through and their physical abilities. And even though I didn't play football growing up, I've always been a fan of football because of the athleticism. When I ran my strength and conditioning company years ago, it was the same sort of thing. I looked at the training methodologies that went around football athletes in order to take really any athlete and make them successful, which is cool. So every year the NFL draft happens, and it's a big deal. This year with the coronavirus, it's kind of bizarre because people are doing it from their living rooms, which is kind of weird. But the hype that goes into the NFL draft is always pretty amazing. And the conversation around the number one pick, right? And the expectations that go around those athletes that are drafted in the first round. What's really fascinating is that there's millions and millions of dollars being spent, obviously in football, billions of dollars being spent on the world of NFL football and globally, which is cool because you can have jerseys sold in China where they don't have any American football, but they're buying millions and millions of dollars of jerseys that support those teams in the United States. So the hype around those athletes in the first round it's pretty amazing. And there's 32 picks in a round, and there's 7 rounds overall. So what's really kind of fascinating is over the years seeing which athletes make it based on where they were picked, because where you're picked kind of at that year basically says what people's expectations are around you. The most famous pick, though, probably now is Tom Brady, who was picked in the 6th round, right? So that was kind of like we got a couple picks left, we'll pick a quarterback, we'll pick this guy from Michigan. And he then went on and is still playing at a really high level, and he's a Hall of Famer, and he's a 6-time Super Bowl champ, things like that. But what's really fascinating is every year there's athletes who are picked in that first round and they flame out. It's like they get paid like a ridiculous amount of money, but then they never make it as a professional NFL quarterback. And by some accounts, the concept of what makes a successful quarterback is that they played for 2 years. They had 2 years as a starter. That's it. Which is, again, blip on the radar. If you saw my video the other day, blip on the radar. But so one of the things that I find fascinating is that all the testing that goes around athletes, and especially at the NFL combine and the NFL draft, like they're measuring the size of an athlete's hand as an indicator of how they're going to be able to hold on to a football. It really is testament to how complicated man can make pretty much anything. But they're measuring like every sorts of metric. But then once they get an athlete on the field in a game situation, it's can they manage the challenges and the opportunities that the game gives them. That's it. And so no matter what your sport is, right, it's all about challenges and opportunities, withstanding challenges and taking advantage of opportunities. So within that, though, as an athlete, we have our own kind of processing. Like we're just, we're trying to manage those things to the best of our own ability, right? And what I love to do, a little mental exercise I love to give my athletes is that, listen, if we took all the fans away, if we took all the coaches away, if we just made your event kind of inert, right? Where there's no hype, there's nothing around it, how would you play? And a lot of athletes say like, oh, I play pretty well. Some athletes say like, no, I get up, I look forward to those situations where, the pressure's on and the people are there and the media's in my face and the expectations are high. The dynamic is that there are your own expectations as an athlete, but then there's also the expectations of the people around you, right? For athletes that play professional sports, there are media expectations, like how do you feel you're going to do today, right? And they'll throw every doubt, fear, consideration roadblock in front of you, and then you have to deal with that when there might have been things that you've never really thought about before. But what's fascinating to me is getting an athlete into this headspace where other people's expectations of them don't have an impact on their performance, right? They can have an impact on you personally to drive you forward, to make you want to work hard, to make you want to prove people wrong. But playing that game of either deflecting expectations or embracing them in a way that you can use them as fuel to get better, as opposed to fire that burns you down, right? That is a really interesting place to be. So what we're going to see now, what always happens every year after the NFL draft, is that when the draft is done this weekend, then really on Monday, everybody's waiting for those new draft picks to show up on at practice. Now with the coronavirus, we're not quite sure where that's going to go just yet, but the expectations on all these athletes starts right now. And past performance is basically what everybody's basing their expectations on. Right? A team drafts a quarterback or any other player, they're like, okay, we've drafted you in the first round. We're expecting you to be a starter this year. And what's fascinating to me, especially in the NFL, is there's a lot of athletes that get, a team will draft a quarterback in the first round and that team is horrible, right? That team is horrible. And now that new young athlete who has tons of potential is thrown into a situation where they're almost destined to fail, right? They're not given the opportunity to develop their skills to survive. They're just thrown in the fire or thrown in the deep end of the pool and told to swim, right? So for you may look back on situations where that was your environment. You were put into a situation where the expectations were really high on you, and it was hard. It was above average, right? It was one of those situations where you're fighting to win, but the challenge is a little bit beyond your capacity. So you're losing, and that losing can break you down mentally. But if you're prepared for it, if you understand that this is what we're getting into, you're more apt to withstand that challenge. One of my athletes this year was put onto a team, and the demand for his abilities in the first year were above and beyond what he should have been doing. He barely made it through. A lot of our focus was on managing physical ability, recovery, muscle tissue health, things along those lines, so that he could withstand this increased load, both physical and mental, right? And so we managed to get him through, but it was by the skin of our teeth. And to be honest, I was thankful when coronavirus hit, because it allowed this athlete to take a well-deserved break. Because if we weren't too careful, this athlete might have gotten either injured or hurt, or burned out, or all of it as well. So it's a little bit of management. So when you watch, again, going back to the NFL draft, when you watch what those guys go through now, here's a fun little thing. Again, if you're not a football fan, it's all good. Just Google a list of the draft picks. Find out what team they went to, and then just see how they go. See how it goes this year. Follow up on a year, see how those athletes did. Did they play? Did they get injured? Did they do well? Some athletes come in and they've got massive physical ability and they rewrite the record books, and that's all great, but that's so rare. All right, so rare. All right, guys, listen, I hope this helped you. Remember, expectations are pretty much other people's expectations. It's their vision of you, but they don't know what's going on inside your head. So manage your own expectations and don't worry about anybody else's, but do what you can to make the most of the next situation that you're going to be in. That's all you can do, right? The success of every athlete is based on two things: the challenges you can withstand and the opportunities you can take advantage of. That's it. So your expectations in those two categories will dictate your success, no one else's. All right, good luck. Do me a favor, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Hit the like button and subscribe. Wherever you are, make sure you're subscribed. All right, talk to you soon. See you tomorrow.